All right, guys, I am overdue to adding a video to this Ruslan Exposed playlist, which I've been updating for years, as you can see here. And quite frankly, we need to clear up a bit of confusion about how we do things here, the Bless God Summit, and some backlash that we've seen from certain pockets of the internet. I'll be talking about all these things transparently. And if you feel like this video isn't sufficient and you're genuinely concerned, check out Aaron's page in the community tab over there. You could drop additional questions that you want me to get into. I'll be on his channel Wednesday and he can ask me whatever he wants. So for the record, I've always been transparent about all of this, but I think as a platform grows and new people come around, there's going to be certain people that just don't like you, and there's going to be certain people that are genuinely confused. And so this is for the people that are genuinely confused. If you don't like what we do, this isn't for you. If you think that a Christian who is a public person can never do anything to monetize their audience, to make a living for themselves, to build a team, to build products and services that is openly connected to their Christian faith, this isn't the video for you. If you hold to what many would say is like the Dorian principle around ministry, I respect it. I get it. But this video is probably not going to be for you, and I'll explain why later. So in this video, we'll address the old clips that have resurfaced. We'll address why I haven't responded to it. I'll talk about that at the very, very, very end, so stay till the end of this video. We'll address the concerns about the Bless God Summit. Why is there a $75 meet and greet upgrade? Why are there children's tickets? How do we do an event? The real behind the scenes of the finances of an event like this, and the merch bundles, the perceived $65 t-shirts and what that's really all about. Okay, so be sure to watch till the end of this video if you actually care, if you're genuinely concerned. And again, if your mind is made up, this video is not for you, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree on these things. Okay, so if you're new here and perhaps you saw the video, you're confused about some of these old clips, and they are kind of jarring when they're put together in an edit like this, let me provide you guys with a little bit of context. So there was a collage of videos released of me saying some fairly jarring things when it comes to finances, when it comes to monetization, when it comes to living in Southern California, when it comes to several different topics. And I could understand how those things can come off jarring if you're now discovering this channel and the Bless God Studios channel. I totally get it. And let me just say, all of us grow, all of us become more wise, we get more access to more mentors, and it's fair to say that the way I spoke about things back then, I probably wouldn't speak about things like that today. As a matter of fact, we have a third channel called Bless God Business, where you can go and see a deeper explanation around the scriptural philosophy about all this sort of stuff. But for context, I am a Dave Ramsey paradigm type of guy when it comes to finances. I believe that we should be debt free. I believe that we should live on a budget. I believe that we should be radically generous. And all of that I pull primarily from Proverbs. So to be clear, I wouldn't say those things today in the same way that I did 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when most of those clips surfaced. The reason why is because I understand that finances is a delicate topic for many people. And because finances is a sensitive topic, I've learned to not be hyperbolic and entertaining when talking about these things on a live stream. Let me address the clips more directly. First and foremost, I think people don't know that when I came on YouTube, the objective was not to be a public Christian. I come from music. And even when I was doing music, a lot of the pushback that we would get is that we were rappers who were Christians instead of Christian rappers. And as I grew, I found out that it's probably best for me to be more transparent about my faith. And so the reason why I got on YouTube was because from 2015 to 2021, my primary source of income was being a full-time musician. Some of you guys don't know I make music. Totally fine. You guys could check it out. It's on Spotify. I think it's rather good. And it is what provided for me and my family in Southern California from 2015 to 2021. Prior to that, I actually worked at a church, the Movement Church in San Marcos. So pulling off being a full-time artist in Southern California to provide for my family was a pretty big feat. We were grossing six figures before we paid anybody, before we paid contractors, before we covered expenses to run the business. And so what happened was my audience started asking me how I was doing this. Fellow aspiring rappers and people who were trying to get into music started asking me for advice. And the channel here has always been driven by what my audience at the time is asking me to engage with. So at the time, my audience was primarily Christian rappers and Christian creatives and musicians, those sorts of folks who weren't really consumed or concerned with trying to build a ministry online as much as trying to figure out how to earn a living off of the things that they're creating. This is what I would call my Christian Gary Vee era. And we'll post some videos over here about the type of topics I was covering. This era then evolved into doing weekly music reviews of other artists and giving them feedback, and also giving them practical advice on how to learn to monetize what they're doing. Now, again, if you don't think a public Christian should ever monetize what they're doing, that's totally fine. Let me put it to you this way. Think of the relationship between a creator and an audience as consensual, meaning that people choose to follow creators. And generally speaking, I think most people don't have a problem with supporting the creators that are putting out stuff they value. So if you're a smaller creator and people know that this is taking a lot of work, this is you sacrificing time from your family, and they can rally together and give $5 a month, and there's 1,000 of them, that can allow the average person who's trying to do music or trying to do YouTube to make a living and potentially transition from their day job. And so to me, the critique of monetizing your audience is not on the back of preaching the gospel and monetizing that. We'll have more on that later. The practical side is that an audience is opting in to watch a creator, and generally speaking, they're already supporting and open to other ways they can support a creator. So if somebody has 70,000 subscribers, 50,000 subscribers, and they can pull together 100 people or 500 people or 1,000 people to support a product, a service, something they provide, that honestly allows that person to make more stuff that the audience who already consented to being there is excited for. And what I saw is that oftentimes Christian creators, people who are rappers, people who are trying to start podcasts, would drive their families and their personal lives in the grounds, sometimes basked under the guise of ministry, when really they were trying to run for-profit businesses around their passion and around their faith. You would be shocked how many Christian rappers, pastors even, have completely ran their families into the ground that I've personally met. How many marriages have been destroyed? How many divorces have been filed? Because of a lack of wisdom and planning around these things, have completely shipwrecked not just their lives, but sometimes their faith. And you may be thinking, well, Ruslan, that doesn't apply to me. Fair enough. You're not a Christian rapper who probably comes from some form of poverty, has some unresolved issues in their personal life, and is married, leading a family. I was speaking to a very specific niche of aspiring rappers trying to figure out how to earn a living off their art before they either have to quit doing the thing that they love or they end up bringing harm to their personal lives. So I say all that to say that context matters. Who was I speaking to? Aspiring Christian rappers. I wasn't speaking about using the gospel to build an audience. I was speaking about people who were driven by the gospel to share their faith in multiple mediums. Some of them rappers, some of them podcasters, some of them aspiring YouTubers. The second thing is, when I open with how do I monetize my audience, I'm actually talking about a hypothetical situation. If you go back, I say 200,000, 500,000 on TikTok. Friends, I'm at 75,000 people on TikTok till this day. I've been shadow banned on TikTok for a long time. So I'm actually not even talking about myself. I'm talking about the person who has an audience on the internet. People like what they do. They've said, yes, we enjoy this thing that you're creating. And how can that person start to monetize what they're doing so that they can provide for their family? Why was I doing this? Because I saw so many of the issues they were dealing with. And from my vantage point of someone that had been an independent Christian artist for 5 years, I wanted to speak into that, and I wanted to provide some wisdom and insight. And when was I doing this? This is between the years of 2018 and I'd say into maybe early 2021. So 4 or 5 years ago. As you can see, I have longer hair. I'm wearing a beanie. I'm in a totally different studio. Not what I'm doing currently. The reason why I stopped making this content is because, again, my audience started to ask me for more of my insight around faith and less around business and marketing. And that is, ironically enough, when the channel really exploded. I discovered that the thing I had done most behind the scenes, which was serving in my local church for decades, leading Bible studies, leading small groups, helping people contextualize what was going on in society and connecting it to scripture, that oddly enough, that was the thing that people really wanted from me. So I say all that to say, as my audience has grown and the channel's evolved, I've learned to be more delicate with how I talk about these things. Being live, engaging with a live chat, talking about things that are sensitive, being hyperbolic, probably not the wisest way to talk about this topic. But here's another clip from that same era when I was live also, but notice that the tone is different and how I talked about finances then is almost the same as how I talk about finances now. Is because my wife is the most valuable in my house, not me. Money is just a tool to create the type of environment where we can focus on our son, where we can focus on our health, where we could focus on saving, where we could focus on giving, where we could focus on helping. My wife is the one who creates that environment, creates that atmosphere, and she's the most valuable. And so some of you guys are feeling conflicted to make more money, but the reality is if you made more money, you would not only add more value, not only would you be a better steward of your money, you could actually create the type of life where you could be optimally a blessing to your future kids, to your spouse, to your neighbors, to your church, right? That is just a fact. And let me also say this. I think there is a chasm of a difference between monetizing the gospel, which is free and available to everyone. You can walk into almost any church and get a Bible, and a Christian who is providing some sort of product, podcast, service, and monetizing that. Those are not the same thing. Those should not be conflated. So let me give you some examples. The Christian company that is publishing books around theology, the Christian company that is publishing books about Christian lifestyle is not the same thing as the monetization of the gospel. Those people run businesses. Those businesses have employees. Those employees need to be paid. Those vendors need to be paid. Those things require a strategy. The gospel should be freely given, and it is. This channel exists to contextualize Scripture in the context of our modern day society and the craziness that we're living in. And it's my opinion that if you are a public person that is a Christian, you're probably going to be passionate about your faith. Whether you are making Christian films and TV series, whether you are making Christian music, you're probably going to be passionate about your faith and want to share it. And that is a good thing. We need more people talking about their faith in the world. But then to conflate that person is monetizing off of the gospel, I think is just a categorical error. I don't think it's the same thing. And you could disagree with that, and we could agree to disagree on that. But to say that the person who's doing a podcast is monetizing the gospel, to say the person that is putting out music is monetizing the gospel, or to say the person that is making a series about the life of Jesus and the disciples is monetizing the gospel, I think it is a categorical error. All Christian media is a supplement to your personal walk with Jesus and your devotion. It is not the sustenance. Let me give you an example. I had a friend once upon a time. He worked at a nutrition and supplement shop. And this friend of mine was broke. And because he was broke, he thought it'd be wise to try and live off of supplements for a week. All he drank was protein shakes. Okay, now protein shakes are great in their proper and intended use. But what happened to him is he ended up having to get his stomach pumped because he overconsumed protein shakes. And the way I would look at all of this is that this is not intended to sustain you. The scriptures are intended to sustain you. You getting into a local church is intended to sustain you. You getting discipled by real people is intended to sustain you. That is your meat and potatoes. This is not, friends. This is just a supplement. This is hopefully around to encourage you, inspire you, empower you to do the other things we just talked about, which is your sustenance. There's also a part that talks about opportunity cost and what I charge to leave and all those sorts of things. And I think, listen, all of us have to count the cost on what it requires us to be away from our families. Now, what I'm talking about primarily there is if I'm going to do a show or if I'm going to travel somewhere. I do stuff for free all the time today. I speak at young adults groups. I do local ministry. I plug in today. But when we're talking about counting the cost to travel somewhere, when we're talking about counting the cost to take away time from the things that you're responsible for, I think all of us have to take a inventory of what am I good at and what am I not good at. Friends, this is why most of you don't change your own oil. Many of you go to Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube provides a service. It buys you back some of your time. This is a concept that sounds crazy and controversial when clipped up, but when you actually examine it, every single one of us counts the opportunity cost of what it requires to do certain things or outsource certain things. And by the way, again, we did a whole playlist on this on our Bless God Business channel, the idea of ridiculous margins. There's a whole video about that. I can't get into all of it, but it's quite simply the exchange of if you're going to do something by hand, like I was, heat pressing all of our shirts, versus outsourcing something. The more you do something by hand, the better your margins are, but the harder it is and the more physically laboring it is in terms of time consuming. So gentleman just came over, he fixed some doors in my covered patio. He made 100% profit on that because he just used his time and his labor. But if he was running a handyman business, there would be someone else that comes and does the actual job while he works on getting the actual leads, decreasing his margins. So there's been some speculation about what does Bless God Studios generate. And let me just tell you, all of it is wrong. Like every single number points it out. We don't have 7,000 paid Patreon. We have less than 2,000. Our AdSense are not as they were projected. And there could be speculation about what it is that we generate. But the issue is that if we don't generate money, What that really means is that some of my team members who work here full time, have health insurance, and have other benefits won't have jobs. And one of the things that I take a lot of joy in is being a Christian business owner who is able to pay his employees a fair, reasonable salary in Southern California, which is one of the most expensive places to live. Now, I know some of you guys think, well, just move to Texas. Well, that's easy for you to say when you're already in Texas. If you have roots here, if you have a church family here, if your community's here, your kids' school is here, can't just up and move somewhere else in the country. Oftentimes, many of us are called to stay and hopefully impact the areas we're already at. But let me give you 2 verses to give you a little bit of perspective. Now, this is actually directly in the context of people earning a living off ministry. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 9. The Apostle Paul is saying, hey, I could charge these people, but I don't because I don't want to be a stumbling block. Read this whole chapter for yourself. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 11, it says, if we have sown spiritual seed among you, is it too much if we reap a material harvest from you? If others have this right of support, shouldn't we have it all the more? Okay, so this is talking about sowing a spiritual seed and reaping a material harvest. Now check out this verse. In the same passage where it says that anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than a non-believer, the standard in this passage, so that people aren't too dependent on the church taking care of other people, is that we are all called to provide for the needs of our extended family and our household. But check out what Paul says in verse 17 around specifically ministry. The elders who direct the affairs of the church well are worthy of double honor, especially those whose work is preaching and teaching. For Scripture says, do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain, and the worker deserves his wages. That is talking about pastors who minister and share the gospel. Mike Winger did a whole video about this, landing at a conclusion where though pastors shouldn't be consumed with the amount of money they make, and they should be, according to what the scriptures say, compensated well. Now, you can watch Mike Winger's video here if you don't believe me. Now, this might come as a shock to you guys, but if pastors are to be compensated well, we are not pastors. We are not a church. We are not a nonprofit. This has always been very transparent. We make Christian media to help you supplement your Christian journey. We also provide products and services. Our products are our prayer journals, which, by the way, are available for free at blessgodpdf.shop, meaning you can get the PDF version completely for free. We also have devotionals. We have t-shirts and hoodies that you could put on so that you could remind yourself of who you represent to live a life that blesses God. Now, some people find that offensive. Don't put anything on a shirt that points to God or monetizes faith. And listen, I get it. We've wrestled with this eternally, and after some of our earlier drops have pulled back from designs with Jesus's face on them. However, I think to say that a Christian brand that is selling a t-shirt or a hoodie to help other Christians represent Jesus in the public square shouldn't is a bit short-sighted. Why would you want to only buy clothes from pagans that probably dislike you and the God you represent? Why would you not want to help Christians earn a living, provide for their families, and provide for their teams? Maybe it's because people see business as a zero-sum game. I don't. I think when someone provides a good service or product and it's at a price that people are comfortable with, that's a win-win. And they can make a profit. And they can pay people. And they can give away money. They can give to the local communities. They can be generous with that. Now, when we're talking about prices, profit, product, we need to adjust what's going on with the Bless God Summit. Some people have been upset that we have a $75 meet and greet ticket. Other people are asking, why are you guys charging for children's tickets? And others just don't like the overall ticket price in general. Okay, well, before I give you all the details on the Bless God Summit, which may shock you, Zach's here with me, and we're going to tell you about our first live podcast event, which was just one day that we had around 150, 200 people at, and the entire process of how that went down.
Okay, so the premise of the live podcast was, let's throw an event. Let's see what the felt need is for an in-person event. Mm-hmm. And let's try to create a really cool experience on a low budget. Mm-hmm. Who do we have for speakers?
So a lot of the same lineup, actually. We had God Logic, we had Trizzle Fitness, we had my pastor, we had Ryan Horton leading worship. Yep. Everyone was local except Ryan Horton, who flew in. Yep. We did it at our church, smaller room. We did it at a way cheaper price. I think it was $50 for general admission, $100 for VIP. Yep. And we did it ourselves. We didn't have anyone helping us. It was just us.
Yeah, so much so that, I was scrambling around, setting stuff up. Chris was cleaning up the food in the back. The food, the Chick-fil-A for the VIP meet and greet was actually delivered by my dad. Mm-hmm. So
And Chick-fil-A messed up the order, and people were waiting for food.
So he had to go back, pick up the food, drive over. We're scrambling. My dad's unloading. Mm-hmm. It was a real grassroots style event. And so because of that experience, we're like, maybe we could do an event that was a little bit more polished.
Yep.
Something that you would want to go to personally.
Yeah, and in that entire event, all the speakers did favors, and we ended up losing money on the event.
Yes.
That's the thing that most people don't factor in, is when you factor in what it costs for AV teams, stage, all those sorts of things, food, feeding people.
Yep.
It's very expensive to put on events.
Yeah, very expensive, yeah.
So this event, Bless God Summit, we wanted to reverse engineer the event we would enjoy being at. So an event that is on site, the hotels are at the same spot as the venue. I go to those events. I think those events allow for the information to hit in a way where there's community happening and relationships are being built there.
Yep.
Those events tend to be at nicer resorts. And we had some doors open with the Westin in Carlsbad through a mutual friend who owns a sound and light company.
Yep.
And we can use that facility. Now, they're also a business. They can't just let us use the Westin for free.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to also pay to use the space, and it's a food and beverage fee, which is very expensive. There is
a room block
that we have to fulfill that people are booking on site, which we don't get a kickback on. There's also us flying in all the speakers who are all doing me amazing favors, us housing all the speakers.
Massive lineup.
Yeah. Us putting all the speakers up, us feeding all the speakers. There's a lot of expenses. There's people that got to set up stage, lights, sound, live streaming stuff. So the folks who have the virtual ticket can get tickets and get their stuff streamed and we can capture it. All of that adds up very quickly. So very quickly, we are now in the 6-figure range to just put this event on.
Yes. Now there might be some pushback. It's like, well, what is this VIP thing? There's no, there should be no, better seats when you're sharing the gospel, and there shouldn't be an extra room for folks. What is, and why is it so expensive?
Yeah, the vision of the event is to encourage, empower, inspire people to build better culture, tell a better story. We go through the idea of first your worldview impacting your virtues, which is like your spiritual discipline, spiritual formation, and then from there going out and impacting the world through building that nonprofit, building that podcast, building that business. So we have folks on all tiers. Day one is Worldview Apologetics. Jay Warner Wallace is going to be there. We have Mike Jones. We have from Inspiring Philosophy, Preston Perry, Dr. Sean McDowell. All of those folks are day one, day two, then day three. And so it's a summit on how to then live out the gospel in every area of your life.
This isn't 3 days of church right before Sunday where you go to church.
This is not a church service. This is not a revival service. This is bringing in people, especially on day three, that are experts in these different aspects, like building a YouTube channel or building a nonprofit. Lila Rose built one of the biggest pro-life nonprofits with live action. There's Trizzle Fitness, who built an online fitness business. There's all sorts of different people that are coming in. Nick D, who's doing music stuff and telling people how to build out the music stuff. And so that's the point of the event. So we did our very best to offer almost everyone who applied for a free ticket. Now, what does that mean? That means all those people who are going to be there in the space need to be there. We want them there. We want young adults there. We want people there with young families that can't afford a $300 conference ticket. That's what we want. Yet, that has to be offset with the expenses. Those folks are going to be offset by the people who are willing to pay a premium to offset some of those expenses. So that's what the VIP is for. They got a special lounge, they got some other stuff. And so most of these events run and are profitable because of the premium prices. We're not profitable. We're down on this event. Full transparency. Going to be losing probably $20,000 to $30,000 on this event. Okay, that's just full discretion. So everyone thinks that we're doing this event, we're making a bunch of money, and we're not. We're losing money off of the event. And I'm at the event speaking multiple times. That means I have multiple keynotes I'm doing. I'm also making sure that I'm around and I'm present for the speakers that flew in to do me favors. And usually at any event I go to, and you guys can see the Liberty University vlog, anyone that's ever been at anything I've spoken to will tell you, for decades, I've been the guy that stood out and met every single person, shook every single hand, took every single picture. But in an event where I'm speaking multiple times a day and I'm entertaining people who are here within the speakers and making sure they're accommodated, and I'm overseeing the entire event, I can't also be accessible the entire day for everyone. That's impossible for me to do that. So we said, hey, folks who want time to come hang out and to get a picture, talk with me and some of the other speakers, they can do that. No one's forcing you to go to this event. No one's forcing you to upgrade to a VIP. No one's forcing you to get a $75 meet and greet ticket. What people don't know is that when you go to an event like this, that you have to use their own vendors on site. And in that, we are making sure that everyone on the second 2 days is getting stuff like breakfast. Folks who are staying on site and have VIP credentials are getting lunch both days. And how this all works, the people who are paying a premium ticket offset the people who were able to give scholarships to who are getting a free ticket.
Yes.
That's the economics of it. No one's forcing you to buy a $75 meet and greet, but I won't be as accessible at an event where I'm speaking at multiple times and running stuff as I would be at a normal church that I'm speaking to.
And we thank them with a nice lunch.
And we thank them with a nice lunch, and we make sure that they have their own lounge. That's what that is. Now, people are also concerned about why are we charging a kid's ticket. A kid's ticket is in the same way that if you go to a restaurant, a kid has to pay for their food. Generally speaking, there are some restaurants that feed kids for free. In the same way where you get on an airplane and you have a kid that's over 2, they have to buy a ticket.
Just did that.
In the same way, we actually have a separate family lounge for families that's going to have their own snacks, their own live stream, their own area where they can hang out. And if they have kids, they can be in there with their own space. That requires us to put someone there to make sure that everything is running, that the live stream is working, that there's food, that all those expenses are being covered. All of that costs money. I wish we could do a free event, but that's not how anything works. We don't have those sponsors yet that could just come alongside and say, hey guys, here's $100,000, go do your own Bless God Summit. We have thought about future events, maybe doing more small scale down half-day events like a live podcast tour at a cheaper price. We've thought about partnering with churches. There's been a couple of churches that have stepped up to decrease the price. But generally speaking, we're not making any money off this. We're losing a lot of money off of this. The reason why we're able to lose a lot of money off of this is because we have reserves from the times we are profitable to make sure that our payroll is taken care of, everyone's health insurance is taken care of, our taxes are paid, and we can take a loss on an event that we believe in because we want to get people in an environment where they can get the information and be in an environment where hopefully the transformation also happens. That's how I've benefited from these events. I go to conferences, I've been impacted in a great way, and I want to put something on that's been a blessing to me for other people. Another concern that's been presented is the appearance that we're selling an outlandish $65 t-shirt. So I think what most people missed is that we have a virtual ticket because people wanted to come to the event, but they couldn't travel to Southern California. And so we provided a $50 virtual ticket. And considering we have a virtual ticket, we decided to bundle that up with different pieces that's custom to the shirt. Now, this is also designed by our friend Josh Nadeau, who's an artist. He needs to be paid. And when you actually factor in that it's a $50 virtual ticket, which again offsets some of our expenses, with a $70 t-shirt, that comes with a virtual ticket to the summit. So you're getting a $50 ticket and a $20 t-shirt. It's not a $70 t-shirt. The same way you're getting a $80 long sleeve or a $65 hat. That's basically a $15 hat when you factor in that it is a $50 virtual ticket. Our 60-day Devo journal, that's a physical product that usually sells for like $30, $40. We're selling it for $65 with a $50 virtual ticket. So this is a bundle to give people an opportunity who can't be there to buy a virtual ticket or buy some exclusive merch or something from our online store with a virtual ticket. Hopefully that makes sense. These are the sort of things that people have asked for, and these are the sort of things that are able to offset the hard costs going into a massive event like this. So if you're upset, if it's not for you, I totally get it. Listen, we all have different ways of doing things. Sometimes people have their way or the highway, and that's just not how we do stuff. If it's a channel that doesn't want to monetize, I get it. Shout out to Off the Curb Ministries. None of their videos are monetized. I understand. If people want to do just free services, I understand. That's not where we're at. And if you don't like it, you don't have to watch, respectfully. Most of us have friends in our real life that we disagree with. Most of us have friends who we may even argue with. So this idea that because I'm friendly with certain folks or folks that I've collaborated with in the past, folks that are perhaps Catholic or Orthodox, folks that are from more charismatic streams, that therefore I'm guilty by association is another fallacy. It's a guilty by association fallacy. I'm pretty sure you have friends, family who you love dearly that you disagree with. And I think that's healthy. And I think that this idea that because I'm ecumenical or because I talk to folks I may disagree with or do a virtual event with someone I may disagree with, that therefore is some sort of stamp to mark and avoid me is unfortunate. And it's sad that people have this sort of all or nothing binary thinking that you can't have someone on and publicly disagree with them while at the same time being firm on the things you stand on. Also, I have to address this idea that I partnered or yoked up with Bill Johnson and Joel Osteen. I addressed this years ago when it was covered, And here's the short version of it. A friend of mine does a 31-day virtual wisdom challenge every January. His name is Pedro Adeo. Pedro is someone that I've known for years, and he has a very diverse stream of people he's connected with. All these different speakers do a one-day live stream session with him based on the day of Proverbs they want to choose, and they go over whatever topic that's on their heart. And so this is a 31-day virtual event inside of a private Facebook group that he does for free. And the year was, I think, 2022 or 2023. I did a day in his virtual 31-day event, and Joel Osteen did a different day, and Bill Johnson did a different day. So I wasn't at the same conference as them. I wasn't at the same event as them. I wasn't on the same stage, and this was a virtual event. And my question would simply be, why would I not take the opportunity to speak to an audience of people that perhaps I have some disagreements with some of the other speakers, but I can add my insight? And I didn't make a dime from the event. Now, the last bit, why didn't I respond to these videos initially? I got to tread delicately. Anyone who is willing to do the work of the original channel that doctored and clipped all these clips up can see that that person has a long history of not just being against anything related to monetization, but also has a long history of spiritual abuse. And that person saw something I said about why young Don deconverted from the faith and what young Don got sucked into, and demanded a conversation with me. And I refused the conversation because I don't negotiate with terrorists. And that person threatened to unload a clip on me, which sounds kind of scary. That person claims to be a pastor and lives on a compound with a bunch of people who are submitted to his power and authority. And anyone that does any bit of research on this can see that there's been a long history of spiritual abuse alleged towards this person. And this is the person that decided to put together this. This is someone's pastor who has an entire channel dedicated to me and doing this. And anyone that did the slightest bit of research could have discovered this person. I'm not talking about the Discernment Ministries channel who reacted to this. I'm talking about the original person. And I am a bit disappointed that the Discernment Ministries didn't practice any discernment with what were their primary sources on this. All of them could have reached out to me. I'm very easy to get a hold of. As a matter of fact, I'll be going on Aaron's page this week on Wednesday. And if you think these answers were inadequate, you can go and leave comments on his community tab. We'll put that over here. Go over there, ask your questions, and I'll answer any single question that you guys have. I'm an open book. I have nothing to hide. I will tell you that the only thing that's frustrating to me about this is not people disagreeing over this. I think we could disagree over this and have dialogue. I think that's fine. I think the part that bums me out is people disagreeing and then assuming motives. This is a logical fallacy called an appeal to motive fallacy. It means that because of the way something appears to someone, they then instantly know someone's heart. And so obviously I acknowledge the appearance in which the way I was speaking about those topics, not a good look. However, to then assume my motives and assume my intent and remove all context from the situation of who I'm speaking to, what am I speaking to, what am I actually selling at the time, I think is a bit of a bummer because it positions people to know my heart, and they know my heart, which is one of the reasons why it took me a minute to respond to this, because I didn't want to be defensive. I know my heart. I know that I love Jesus, and I know that I love helping God's people also handle their time, talent, and treasure in a way that does the most amount of good in their life within a modern day context. So you're totally allowed to disagree with me, but I would tread lightly in assuming to know my heart about these things. I don't think anyone should position themselves as a mind reader, especially without doing all the research and having all the facts and looking at what I'm saying in the context of who I was speaking to, when I was speaking, and why I was saying the things I was saying. Responding to these, I have to be delicate because whether you believe it or not, there has been credible threats and weird situations that Christian creators have gotten into. I'll use this as a last story. One of the persons piling on in the comments section is someone that's interacted with us, and he has showed up to 2 different Christian YouTubers' house at night after the sun is set, unannounced, and spooked out their families. Okay, the same person I just had an interaction with at an event I was at a few weeks ago. He tried to confront me about it. And I told him, I said, hey man, we can disagree on these things, but you are not allowed to show up to people's house. Okay? And he said, I'll do whatever I want to do. I can show up to people's house. These are the types of things we deal with behind the scenes, is we have real families and we have real responsibilities. And these things can escalate. And the last thing I'm trying to do is to get into a fight or back and forth with people. Again, I'm not talking about the channels that reacted to this. I'm talking about the people at the core of this. Okay, so one of the people at the core of this, I think, has some serious issues and has a long history of being rather unhinged on the internet. I don't want to go back and forth with them. That is why I waited to react to this. So ultimately, if you think I'm wrong, pray for me. Pray for me. Pray that God would reveal these things to me in a way that you want him to. Pray that he would convict me. But also consider that I am in a local church. I have a ton of pastoral covering. I have people that have always been along my journeys. If you go back and look at some of those old videos, my pastors from both churches I've been at, I've been a part of 2 churches for the last 20 years, are constantly on my channel. So believe that God's got me. He's going to show himself. He's going to correct me if I need to be corrected. And some of these things we could just agree to disagree on. And quite frankly, when those clips are chopped up and edited the way they were, they come off quite damning. But in proper context, they're not, which is why they're still up. And you can go watch them in their proper context and consider who I'm speaking to and what am I speaking about. I've always been transparent and always thought it's valuable to document my entire YouTube journey, from when I started doing my day as a full-time rapper in 2015 to me dabbling in podcasting in 2016 to me really transitioning to that in 2019 and then eventually talking more and more about my faith in 2020 and 2021. All of that is available. I've never hid any of this sort of stuff. So if you've been along for the ride, this all isn't shocking to you. Thank you for those of you guys that have defended me publicly. If you're new here and you don't know or don't understand and you're confused, we have a whole third Bless God business channel where we actually go deeper and go scriptural on all of these topics. We created a playlist going more in depth over 3 videos. So we'll have that over here. You can go check that out. I think you'll actually find a lot of value, especially if you're an aspiring creative entrepreneur. That is why we actually created that channel, because a lot of that content just didn't fit here. Created a separate channel. And if you notice, I've matured in the way I speak about these things. I'm not as flippant. I don't go live and talk about these things the same way. I've matured because I know that these things are delicate. And I've also wrote a whole book about this sort of stuff, about godly ambition. I have no problem with admitting that I am an ambitious, driven person. But I think it's important to anchor that in scripture. And that's what my entire book is about. And we'll be announcing that pretty soon here. It's coming out in September. All right. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. And again, I'll be on Aaron's page later this week on Wednesday. You can go to his community tab, his post notes, drop any questions there. I would love to engage with all this stuff. And if you're one of those discernment ministries that reacted to it, listen, I'm not mad at you. Reach out to me. I'm very easy to get a hold of. If you shoot me a DM on Instagram, I'll probably respond to you. And I'm open to hopping on a phone call with any of you guys. All right. Love you guys. Peace.